Hello student, this video clips I will discuss about the leveraged buyouts investment and the exit model. The target company ABC Inc. is hypothetical company, but for your final project, you'll use the actual, the existing company from the listed market, from the public market. Okay, so we already discussed all these process during the class, but again, this model is comprised of transaction assumption and sensitivity tables and source and uses of the cash proceed, and then the free cash flow calculations and projections from your income statement and the balance sheet, and then the debt repayment schedule and cash sweep, and then we'll complete this equity value at the purchase year to get actual stock price using this capital cash flow from CCF model with interest tax shield using the cost of equity unlevered, assuming 100% equity financing, because we are going to amortize the debt amount that will change the cost of capital of the company. In order to not be affected by these changes, we use cost of equity unlevered. So let's get started. It's the same process as we practiced during the class. EBITDA purchase multiple. Purchase multiple is based on the current transaction in the market, right? Like competitors. So usually the LBO the exit multiple require like 8.5%, the 7.7 times or 10 times in the United States. So let's say that's the 8.5 is the multiples. And then purchase year EBITDA. What is EBITDA? Earnings before interest, and then add back the depreciation and amortization, because depreciation and amortization is non-cash transaction. So where we get the EBITDA? There you go, EBITDA. So we have the EBITDA here from actual income statement. You need to calculate this EBITDA, right? And then purchase EV today, 8.5 times. Now $2.4 billion is purchase the enterprise value today. If this company has debt 500, and then the cash on the balance sheet at the inception 100 million, so the total equity purchase price is enterprise value minus existing debt, and then the existing cash on the balance sheet. So $2 billion is the equity purchase price. But equity purchase price from the market at the inception is not the sponsored equity investments from the LBO holdings, right? This $2 billion is to acquire the company, the target company, using the debt, right? But once they acquire this company, and then this the equity will be extinguished, right? So this is the replacement between the old equity and the new equity, right? Invested, sponsored by the LBO holdings. Usually LBO holdings, new equity investment, we can just start from like 1,000, like, or the half of this purchase the EV. So let's assume just 1,000, okay, around 50%, or yeah, and then the sponsor equity percentage total sources we cannot calculate until we finish it. There's a source and uses part, and then we'll come back this the exit year. And then as you guys notice, we have number 1, 5, and 6 that explains the order of the completion of each section. Okay, so number 2, the sources and the uses. Now once we identify the equity purchase price, it should be $2 billion based on 8.5 EV/EBITDA multiple, right? And then the refinancing existing debt amount assumed here $500 million. The transaction fees and expenses usually the 1 to 2% of the purchase equity price is the transaction fees and expenses. So let's say it's just 1.5, and then we can calculate here. The $30 million is transaction fees and expenses, a huge amount of fees, by the way. Then let's assume this cash for operation is the minimum, the cash amount, but we have already 100 cash on the balance sheet, so we don't have to consider this. And then the year by year, the company has the ability to generate the minimum cash amount, but it's not indicated here on the balance sheet. So let's just skip this too. And then total use. The reason why we need to get the use part first before this source part is that we need to determine how much we need to use this some amount of cash, and then where do we to make this a source of this money from this section, right? So total use part now. Because we have percentage, let's just sum this 3 up, and then total amount to use is $2.5 billion. It is a little bit increase from this, right? Because of transaction fees, all the money added back. So this amount again, this $500 million refinancing existing debt. That means now we repaid this existing debt and then replace this existing debt with new debt financing, right? So we have to use at least $2.5 billion. Okay, now let's complete the source part. Source part must be started from the total source is equal to the total uses, right? Now we need to identify where this money come from, right? That explains the sources. Then here, the management equity, if this the LBO investment is involving the management, the investment, definitely there is a management equity. But let's just make it simple, just LBO, the pure LBO, right? And then sponsor equity. Sponsor equity, where is sponsor equity? There you go. We have to link this amount. And then excess cash. How much is the excess cash? Let's just assume 1,200. 1,200, so that's half of this EV. Half of this EV as just as a starting point. But again, we'll adjust this amount to get this the satisfactory IRR at the later stage. Then excess cash. We don't have excess cash yet. Excess cash. Again, this existing the cash will be used on the cash the minimum cash amount. And then there's no the excess cash. So how to get it? Now the total source minus sponsor equity. Sponsor equity. Now we have $1,339,000,000 is the new debt amount, right? New debt amount. Now this new debt amount can be also broken down into the different types of the tranche, the different types of the debt, right? And then we also discussed during the class what the revolver, term loan, and then senior notes or subordinate notes are, right? So we first start from the multiples, the debt over EBITDA. Once we get this EBITDA 8.5, this debt over EBITDA must be right. It's lower than right the 8.5. So how do we get it? It's very right. This amount divided by where is the EBITDA? Right, there you go. So 4.7, right? The 4.7 is the debt over EBITDA multiple. Then we'll allocate this 4.7 EBITDA to the transit here. We have an assumption here. The revolver, it depends on your preferences or the market trends. So usually the term alone before plus the LIBOR is just half or a little bit greater than the half amount of the total debt newly issued, right? And then again, this 1 times of EBITDA is the senior note debt multiples, and then the rest of the amount of the multiples is allocated to the junior subordinate notes, right? Again, it is from your the research which kind of debt you are going to use, right? It's totally depend on your research. Then we have term loan A, term loan B. Term loan A must be repaid within the exit year, before the exit year with the same amount. Revolver is the total kind of a line of credit, not preferred. But the term loan B has like 1% minimum, but it has kind of provision that if the company generate the free cash flows, that free cash flow must be paid out to the term loan. But just the 1% is mandatory before this the excess cash generation, right? Now we allocated this debt to EBITDA multiple here, right? And then let's calculate. We don't have any term loan. Now let's get this amount. 3 point. This. Now we need to allocate, right? This 3 times divided by 4.7 now times. So we got allocated here, right? In the same way, the proportion out of the total debt, then rest of the part, right? Total out of the debt. So we allocate this total each of the tranches, the debt tranche, the debt amount out of this total debt, right? Total debt. The interest rate, the sponsor equity, again, this is the cost of equity unlevered. You know, you guys remember how to get the cost of equity unlevered, right? Assuming the 100% the equity financing, right? We are going to use to discount the future cash flows, free cash flows under this CCF model. Again, this company has debt, but we are using this cost of equity unlevered because the total free cash flow of the firm is gotten assuming not affected by the changes of the debt capital, right? So here the total source, then the sponsor equity. Now let's assume like 50%, but you have to definitely just justify if how this 50% work. And then total debt to newly issued. Revolver recently like 4.5% in the market, and the term loan like 5% from the market. And then term loan B. Now this term loan B before a LIBOR, that means this has some floating rate changes here. So 2.5, let's say 2.5 plus now LIBOR. And then the senior notes is very high percentage, and because it is the inferior to the term loan A or term loan B or revolver. And then junior subordinate debt is very high percentage, in the market that I researched, for example. And then let's calculate percentage of a total. Percentage of a total is just this divided by the total source. And then let's drag it down. We have this. So we now finally got this total capital structures. The sponsor equity is only this 47%. And then the total debt to newly issued is 52.8%. And then this 52.8% is comprised of term loan B and senior notes and junior notes, right? This senior notes or junior notes has very high percentage of interest because it's not necessary to be repaid, but the term loan B, term loan A, or revolver must be repaid during the investment period, right? That's why this percentage of interest rate is low, right? Term loan A has like the instrument repayment plan requirement. That's why it's not much preferred. But the term loan B is depending on how much this company generate free cash flows. This free cash flows is will be the source of the repayment, but otherwise just 1% of the total the borrowing amount, $850 million. And then this 2.5% is the base, right? Because it must be added to the LIBOR. It must be added to the 2.5%. So it has like floating rate changes. So we finish it until here, and then we'll move to the free cash flow of calculation and projection part. See you in the next video clips. You guys, bye bye.